This program is brought to you by the University of Michigan. For more information, visit umich.edu.
Human action is multi-motivated and multi-regulated. For having an action, you have to have motivations, motives, and you have to have also rules. If we only would have motives, we would be like in a Brownian movement, going from one side to another side, changing of desire. The very strong instability of many of our motivations makes a clear need of rules. So I have worked on motivations and on rules. Main motivations are interests. Interests can be very narrow, personal, particular, short-term, or can be very wide, collective, and long-term. Sometimes interests, reasons, and emotions go in the same directions. Sometimes they contradict, and emotion tries to impeach the action, tries to stop the action. Reasons here are impersonal arguments. Sometimes some people act following not their interest but their argumentation, their or other people's argumentation. During the French Revolution on August 1789, there was a very strange night where a lot of people renounced voluntary or seemingly voluntary to privileges, to feudal privileges. For example, some bishops were renouncing to having the tax of 10% on the production of peasants and of landowners. Okay. Regulations, legal, moral, and cultural, and these interact. So sometimes we act out of fear of sanction. Sometimes we act out of fear of guilt. Not only there is the emotion of guilt, but there is the anticipation of guilt that has a strong dissuasion power. And also we have fear of social rejection, and we have many different ways of social rejection, just some visual expressions. Ostracism on the other extreme, contempt, hate, indignation. There are several colors of social rejection. I have listed here the punishments, but now I feel the necessity of also telling the positive side. Social norms are not only obeyed by fear of social rejection, they are also obeyed by social acceptance, social expression of good evaluation, but they are also, if you are correct and you act well 2 or 3 times, you have building of trust, and if you have trust, sometimes you had also good reputation, and many people obey more to trust and to good reputation than to fears of legal sanction, of guilt and of shame. And also the moral regulation is not just based on fear of guilt, it's also based on pleasure or duty sense. Well, philosophers do not like that neurobiologists have found that when you act morally, there is a sort of inside biochemical recompense, a positive sort of reinforcement. This is not good news for philosophers, especially for Kant specialists who prefer to act just out of the duty sense. Well, for some philosophers, having pleasure in being moral is a little bit immoral. And laws are not only obeyed by fear of sanctions, but they are also obeyed from the admiration to law. A lot of people read the law without reading the fines or the jail. The punishment chapter is not read many times. Normally, subjects, we consider ourselves mainly moral subjects, and secondary cultural subjects, and only in third place legal subjects. But we think that the people that are around us are mainly legal subjects, and second cultural subjects, and third, like us, moral subjects. So I obey to my consciousness, but I think that others obey to law. The challenge is harmonization of the tree system, and that's the title of the conference. It's how to work for having no contradiction between law and morals and culture. How to accompany the very quick evolution of law by cultural change and moral change of people. So, taking some vocabulary, legal norms, moral norms, social norms. The norms of etiquette, of if you take the spoon first or the knife, these things are not a moral problem, are not a legal problem, but are perhaps a problem of fearing social rejection if we do not know, as it happens, these rules. Why worry so much about the table? The fear of legal sanctions was effective in the United States to reducing homicide rate from about 14 per 100,000 to about 7 per 100,000. It was very effective, but the population in jails was growing in a factor of about 5 times. Colombia has 140 or 50 jailmates per 100 inhabitants. United States has 750. It's too expensive. And cynicism about other people's motivations tends to produce a self-confirmed prophecy. Well, the harmonization problem is very clear. Law says, please do not kill, please do not practice private justice, special revenging murders or things like that. But in some cultural spaces, the contrary is the rule. In Colombia, in some regions, killing the man that is lying in the bed with my woman is part of an honor code culturally enforced. If the man doesn't kill, he is no sufficiently man. These are examples of divorce between law, morals, and culture. The growth, the illegal growth of the city, the divorce between, that's a divorce between law and morals and culture. Morally and culturally, most of people accept this kind of city's growth. The occupation of public space, it's the same case. In some shops in Colombia, the seller offers no tax if you do not need a receipt. And in a study that we made, about 30% of the people accept that offer. That offer is publicly made in face of other people that are attending the same shop. And about 1/4 of the 30% feels guilt, and only 1 in 30 people feels shame. So tax evasion is not strongly opposed by culture. So I will speak about harmony of law, morals, and culture if there is no cultural approval and no moral approval to illegal behavior. That's the precise sense. And the harmonization is the construction of cultural and moral refusal of illegal actions and moral and cultural approval of legal obligations. So if the 3 three regulatory systems work in the same direction, even if some of them are silent in some of the matters, but if they work well, there is coexistence. If not, there is not coexistence. There is violence, or at least illegality. I have to remember that we do not know if moral reflection is convergent or is divergent, but each human being is invited to developing his own morals, obviously inspired in law, in constitution, in art works, in family values, in work values, and so on. And each community has the right to develop certain different customs, habits, for example, food habits. And if someone makes a mockery about it, they can go to the justice and defend. There is also religious pluralism. There is sexual pluralism to some extent, to different extent in different states. So that's the harmony between law, morals, and cultural in an individual. From individual to individual, it can change. You have different things that are approved by different individuals. And sometimes you have divorce between morals and culture. You have, for example, taking 3 ties. I could put to me today 3 ties, or having strange laces or so. So that's not my problem. I accept that morality makes people to behave sometimes in rupture with culture. My problem is here. When you have illegal actions that are culturally approved or morally approved or both, that's a big problem. One main characteristic and beautiful characteristic of the 3 systems of ruling is the 3 roles that we can play with them. A rule can be used in the sense that I obey the rule. Another very different sense is I use that rule to make you to obey to that rule. And the third characteristic is let's join some people and we can try to change, very clearly law. We can also, it's more difficult to change our moral reasoning or our moral judgments, but you have methodologies, Colbert, and so on. And you have also, and that's the more ambitious point, is to change culture, the third column. Change the things for which people feel shame, or change the things for which people feel well accepted or well recognized. If this is a representation of divorce between law, morals, and culture, then agreements are difficult to make and very difficult to apply, to develop, to accomplish. If you have in line law, morals, and culture, in line, compatible, I don't know identified, because that would be integrism. And I am not defending integrism. The specialization of law, of morals, and culture is a very beautiful human construction. Law and morals have at least 2,500 years, but not 5,000 or 10,000. And humanity has been ruled by social norms a lot more time than by law and morals. Law and morals are relatively recent discovery. So if you have the 3 regulatory systems in line, it is very easy to make agreements and to accomplish agreements. And this has very strong economical consequences. Douglas North is an economist that works in the history of economies, and his main discovery, very broadly presented, is this. Legal change is not sufficient if you have not change here and change here. And only societies that have this harmony between formal and informal rulings can get quick economical development. Some data about Bogota: 6.5 million inhabitants. In 94, 93, it was a paradise of disorder, of administrative lenience, of socially accepted corruption, with low sense of belonging and pessimism. Typically, in a social meeting, someone tells you Do you feel that you pay too much real estate tax? I have a friend. We could arrange the tax valuation down, so you have to pay less. And there were a lot of crimes against life and propriety. As candidate for mayor, I was invited for a seminar, a forum, or an encounter about the stealing of cars. And in my first government, in the first Security Council meeting, I swore that I will not go to discussions about car stealing before we make the same number or more discussions about life crimes, crimes against life. This is Colombia. As you see, excepting 93, Colombia has been more violent than Bogota. We will see this, what was the evolution. Bogota was characterized by a shortcut culture. I mean by shortcut culture, trying to get the results in a very short time, a very short term, without looking to consequences in time, longer, more remote consequences, and also disregarding the consequences for people different from ourselves. Well, these are manifestations of shortcut culture you can get from jaywalking, cars parking on sidewalks, street vendors in unauthorized places. Some actions. The main idea is that you are not born as a citizen. Citizenship is like language. I don't know any person that has been born speaking. If a very practical pair of parents were shortcutters, they would not speak to their baby. They will say, let the baby grow up. When he speaks, we will speak to him. And citizenship is the same. If we do not treat one the other as citizens, we will never get citizens. The group that backed me in 1994 elections was called Ciudadanos en Formación, citizens in preparation, or citizens in formation. Okay, so the official or more official definition of citizenship's culture, that's the public name of harmonizations of law, morals, and culture, was this cultural regulation of interactions between strangers and between strangers and state officials. If a state officer says to Pedro, who is in the file waiting, says, hey Pedro, the friends are for something. Please come and I will make you quicker attention. These are the monks of silence. So what did they do? They were in silence themselves, and they just went to noisy places. And, well, we use also mimes instead of traffic policers in a small part of the city, 300 meters by 300 meters. But the discussion with the journalists was fascinating. When we announced the change of corrupted police officers by mimes, the first question of the journalist was, will the mime or will the mime put fines? Can he? They said, no, sorry, mimes cannot put fines. And so the journalists got very pessimistic. And that was a sort of first force confrontation between the traditional pessimism and the innovation. Mimes worked, at least worked better than corrupted policers. And they were enforcing zebra crosswalking respect. In a scene that illustrates the different regulatory systems, it happens sometimes that a car stops on the zebra